Hi, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Suzanne Lynn, and today, man, we've got a great author. His name is David Maloney, and he wrote the book When the Owl Sings. It's a supernatural thriller. But before we get into his book, I want to share the fact that this guy has like the coolest job in the world. He works in forensics. And David, you've worked in forensics before CSI was ever a thing, right?
Yes, I've been in it for 23 years now.
Wow, that's a lot of crime scenes.
Yes, I've processed over 1,000 scenes.
I can imagine that you have a couple books in you just alone about that, right?
Yeah, I have a few ideas, a few
Well,
additional ones.
yes. Let's talk about When the Owl Sings. What's it about? I know it's a supernatural thriller. It's kind of a couple different worlds colliding with each other.
So when the owl sings is about it's about a investigative journalist who has a unique ability. It opens in ancient Maya, so it's the Mayan civilization colliding with the 21st century. And
Wow.
then owl mythology is interwoven throughout the story. So you're right, it's the Mayan mythology colliding with the 21st century.
So you're going to have to educate me just a little bit when you talk about owl mythology. Talk to me about that. What is that?
So a lot of people believe owls, the wise old owl,
Okay.
everyone thinks. Owls are actually, in cultures all around the world, they symbolize death.
Mm,
So, I mean, nobody
mm,
eats owl, nobody hunts owl.
that's true.
They symbolize death. So in this story, the ancient, one of the ancient Mayan gods uses an owl as a symbol of what he does.
So your protagonist has some amazing abilities. Are you able to tell us a little bit about what he can do
Um,
without
he,
giving away too much? But
yeah, he has a unique ability that it's always been a curse for him. He's been tortured about it. Um, he looked at it as it has ruined his life. And
wow.
then as he gets older and he kind of ignores his gift or his curse, he finds out later on as he's coming to terms with things with his dad and with his ability, he learns it is more of a gift and not necessarily a curse. And then he's
Mm.
thrust into a situation to where that has to work, or there's catastrophic things that happen.
I think a lot of us are going, "Oh, wow. I can relate to that." Things that I go, "Why? Why is that? Why was that put on me?" But maybe someday I'll be able to see it as a blessing, as a wonderful gift. I mean, in this case, saving a life, right?
Yeah, I mean, metaphorically speaking, we all have things that we either like about ourselves or don't like about ourselves. And, we all
Mm.
have to come to terms with it. And then eventually we kind of figure out the very thing that maybe we didn't like about ourselves is actually something that is a gift
Hmm.
either to us or to somebody else.
Wow. So, kind of in the end, it's good versus evil. Can you talk about that?
In the first three chapters, you learn about the Mayan mythology, the antagonist, and the protagonist.
Okay.
So you know who the good guys are, and you know you don't necessarily know who the good guys are, but you know who the bad guys are.
Right.
It's a very distinct antagonist, and those two kind of worlds all come together in the end.
Mm. Are you in this at all? Is there any of you in the characters?
It's funny because I get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
In part of the book, the protagonist, Mason, has to kind of sort things out with his father. And everyone asked me, "Did you sort things out with your dad?" I'm like, "No, that's not me. That's the character. Me and my dad are fine." but it's funny because you can't completely remove yourself. So friends and people that know me, that have read the book, said, "Yeah, I saw you in it completely."
No kidding.
So yeah, there's probably more of me than maybe I'd prefer, but yeah.
It just seeped out. I mean, it's who you are. How
Yeah,
how
it's
how long has that book been in you?
so actually it took me 7 years to write, but when I tell people that, they're like, "Wow," and I'm like, "Well, that's a little bit misleading because I didn't work on it straight for 7 years. I work on
Sure,
it for 6 months or 3 months, and then I
sure.
don't touch it again for a year. Um, so it did take a while. I mean, I was doing a lot, raising a kid, coaching, working. So finding time to do this was, sometimes I would go to the mountains by myself for a week and do nothing but write. So it took a while, but it also evolved. I had one of my editors was surprised that it took that long.
Hmm.
She said that usually when it takes that long, you kind of see some breaks and some other things that she didn't see was there.
Because we change as people, right? So our writing kind of.
Well, I had one that said a lot of times you go off storyboarding, so everyone
Hmm.
kind of knows what that is. But I didn't with this. I
Wow.
let it evolve as I went through it, and I don't know if that's harder or better or worse or what, but it allowed me, I think, to let the creativity evolve,
Mm.
which I think it turned out well. So
Yeah, the characters are very rich and you get very involved with them. Um, what do you hope as a reader that someone walks away and says or feels?
you, the my goal was always, I wanted a clean story. I dedicated it to my daughter. I wanted
Mm,
something that she would be able to read, and it, wasn't trashy. It wasn't, a lot of foul language. I just wanted a clean, entertaining story that makes people think
mm,
about how things are interconnected, even though we don't know it. In this story, one thing leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another, and all of a sudden you realize at some point, if that first domino didn't fall, we wouldn't have got to the last one. So, and just people that struggle with characteristics they have, embrace it, embrace who
mm.
you are.
I hear a little bit of your forensics, very methodical and making the connections. One thing is connected to another. I don't know. Had you thought about that before? That
Uh,
maybe you're writing like you work.
Um, Now that you say that, I see that. I can totally see that. I guess I didn't think of it before, but yes, I mean, you're right. And a forensic investigation is very methodical, and things lead to other things and other things. And next thing you know, you're catching bad guys.
Wow.
So,
Wow,
yeah.
that's neat. You've got to write a book about forensics. That's just the coolest job ever. I mean, this lends itself to be a movie, in my opinion. What are your thoughts
Um,
on that?
I always, it's kind of funny because I always thought, um, and I know exactly the moment I thought, you know what, Hollywood needs some ideas, some new
Mm.
ideas. And it was actually when the movie Bewitched was remade. I'm like, God, did they really make that? They really remake that? We got to get some ideas. So I started thinking, and I
I
came up
love
with this
that.
idea, and I thought, yeah, I think it would be a really, I think it would be. I think it'd be a good movie.
I mean, you can almost see the characters and, the colors and uh, almost put yourself into a movie like this. It's really
Yeah, I
cool.
mean, I like to describe it. It's kind of like the Dead Zone meets the Crow,
Mm.
except instead of a crow, it's an owl. And
Yeah,
there's owl mythology instead of crows.
very interesting. Any final thoughts before we wrap up the interview?
um, no, I just that was always my goal, was to make something a clean, kind of entertaining movie with some thought, with potentially some intellectual standards mixed into it,
Mm.
some culture and some mythology. And um, yeah, I mean, I was pleased with the way it came out.
Is your daughter proud of you?
Yeah, she likes it. She got the first copy.
That's great. Hopefully signed.
Yes.
Well, we want you to purchase the book When the Owl Sings. And David Maloney, thank you so much for your time. It's just amazing. It's
Yeah.
been a
Well,
joy.
well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.